Hi there, and welcome back to the CKM Red Rugby League channel. Hope you are all well wherever you're watching from. It is another glorious Tuesday. We have just the two games to bring you this week, which means that the season's end is drawing ever closer. And the ever reliable Luke Jobson is here with me to go through team lists and talk you through all the upcoming fixtures. How are you going, mate?
Very good, mate. If you asked me that on Sunday at about 6:30 p.m., I would have said I probably need to check myself into the nearest psychiatric ward because Parramatta are doing my head in. But the boys got up. Parramatta got up. Belgrade is red again. We're pumped about that. We've got finals action coming up. I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit scared for this week. Just a little bit scared as a Parramatta fan. But you know what? For now, we're good. Ask me again on Saturday night. How are you, mate?
I am very good, mate. I'm very excited to get into all the games. As ever, we'll be going through them in chronological order. If you don't have time to stick with us for the entire show, you can catch all the individual previews over on our Recast channel. We have a great time over there. Definitely urge you to go check that out. I think we jump straight into game one then. Seagulls versus Roosters. Both teams not making many changes. The only change for the Seagulls is the number 21, and that is Tavita Funa coming in. Other than that, the Seagulls line up 1 through 20 exactly the same, which means that Tom Trbojevic is your fullback, Saab and Garrick are the wings, with Parker and Harper in the centres. Then it's Foran and Cherry Evans in the 6 and 7, Aloye and Tapau in the props, Croker at 9, Olika R2, Schuster in the second row, Jake Trbojevic at 13, then Walker, Lawton, Kepi and Paseka making up the bench, with Sipley, Suli, Surinam and the aforementioned Tavita Funa over there in the 21. Down to the Roosters, again, not many changes. Their big loss this week, the big headline out of their side is two enforced changes now, with the news that Sam Verrills has not held up at the disciplinary, despite the fact that he's named at the 9. He's gone for 2 weeks, which means that his season may be as good as over. Although they're on the team sheet in the 9, he will not feature there. The likelihood is that Marshke will probably come from the reserves and play in the 9. But there is no Sia Takiaho either. He's gone this week, so Liu comes into the 10. Egan Butcher and Nat Butcher making it to the bench. Other than that, no changes from the Roosters. So it's Tedesco, Tupou, Morris, Kieran and Ikavalu. Into the half, 69 and Hutchison, Waria, Hargreaves and Liu in the props, with Verrills named at 9, although we've just mentioned that he won't play there. Then it is Crichton and Tupanua in the second row, with Radley at 13. Then it is that reliable bench of Walker, Nat Butcher, Egan Butcher and Fletcher Baker in the 17. Down to the reserves, it's Copley, Thomas, Marshke and White. First things first, what is your thoughts on this one?
This game is dependent on one thing. And you look across these team lists, you would argue this is a very even matchup, bar the side of Kieran and Ikavalu against Saab and Parker, or Saab and Harper, however they line up. I would argue that is the one deficiency that the Roosters have. But as we've seen, Kieran is playing superbly at centre. Ikavalu's not having a bad year. Yes, a couple of mistakes, but you know what? He's still doing a serviceable job. And if he can shut down Saab coming out of his own end, they'll be all right. This game will come down to one thing. Can the Roosters do what Melbourne did to Tom Trbojevic last week and essentially take him out of the game? If, and it's a big if they can do that, the Roosters win 13 plus. If they can't, Manly get up. We saw last week how reliant Manly is with Trbojevic in the side as a part of their attack. He had those couple of weeks out during Origin where Manly, for the most part, still looked okay. They knew they didn't have to rely on him. And as a result, they were quite serviceable. It wasn't the attack that we see with Tom Trbojevic, but it's also not the attack that we saw in the first 4 weeks. However, with him in the side and at the back, it looked and felt as if they relied too much on him trying to come through the middle. That inside out play that they had with him doesn't work against a big forward pack, a mobile forward pack like the Storm, and the Storm had great sliding defense. He also took away his kick return. A strong ball runner coming out from his own end. If they kick to the wings and they kick to the likes of Garrick and Saab, whilst both still potent, they're not Tom Trbojevic. If the Roosters can shut him down, kick to the corners, and get on him early, recognize where he is on the field, recognize whether the outside in play is going to come in, whether he's going to float around the back. If they can recognize where he's going to be, if they can, they don't necessarily even have to pinpoint it, but if they can just be there or thereabouts and shut him down, I've got the Roosters winning this. They're so even everywhere else. Isaac Liu may be the weakness in the forwards, but I mean, even then, he's had a fantastic year, rewarded with a 3-year deal at the Titans for next year, and they still have the Butcher brothers and Baker on the bench. I'm not worried about the forward attack. And, I mean, what do you think? Because realistically, if Turbo is quiet, you need someone else to step up, and unless Daly takes a leading role here, Matt, I don't see it happening.
Yeah. Got Joe joining us there. Welcome back, Joe. Glad to see you back again. For me, I think that if the Roosters this week, if they are to win this game, they don't fall for the trap of idolising Tom Trbojevic. They definitely be wary of the threat, but they don't put their whole game plan around Trbojevic. Because Manly, if last week exposed one thing, it's that if Trbojevic has a bad game, Manly have a bad game. So they will now be looking at other options because they'll be aware that the Roosters are going to pin it on him. They're going to put bombs up that force him to sit under the ball instead of attacking it at speed. The Roosters have got a good kicking game. The message will be find turf. Don't put it up, find turf. You're going to see a lot of lateral crossfield kicking. You're going to see when the kickers set up either side of the 20s in and around the 30, 40 metre mark, they're going to look to find grass wherever they can, because that unpredictable bounce is going to take the ball away from Trbojevic. It's going to give him a little bit. It's going to give him a little less time to pick up the ball, hit his stride, and attack the line the way that he wants to. When he's sat under a ball, it gives him the opportunity to come forward onto it, and then he's already got up a decent head of steam. Again, they'll be wary of Saab and Garrick. Tom, while he's had a great season, he's not the only one that's had a great season. Foran has come on in leaps and bounds when many people said that him going back to Manly was the worst thing for his career and that he was potentially done. Des has handed him a lifeline and he's paid him fourfold for it. Cherry Evans stepped up, really took control of this forward pack. Aloye is becoming an enforcer, working alongside Tapau. A lot of people were wary about the fact that when the Seagulls lost for Noah Blake, that they'd maybe lose some of that go forward. Schuster, very versatile attacking threat, good low centre of gravity, a lot of upper body strength, and he's got a decent passing game to him as well. He's an issue on the edges. I mean, going through to the Roosters, the threats are obvious. Tupou, gun in the air. He also makes strong meters on kick returns. Morris, agile player, very good finisher, but he's also a very good creator. Kieran, we've seen him come on in leaps and bounds as well. Ikavalu just does his job. The only thing that I'm questioning is Lamb switching to the 6. He was at 7 last week. Now Hutchison's a 7. Are we going to see Lockie Lamb potentially take a little bit of a back seat in this game and Hutchison control it? Because I think that the Roosters, when they let Hutchison dictate the game in comparison to when they let Lamb run it, they are a better attacking threat. But the Seagulls are the better attacking side here. The numbers call that out. 756 points scored to the Roosters 655. Defence is where this game is going to be won and lost. Points conceded, 532 by the Seagulls, 513 by the Roosters. So for me, I think if the Roosters, if Manly are smart, they'll be looking at Plan B. They'll be looking at other options than that Trbojevic sweeping block play that you see come off time and time again, and they'll start looking at some angled plays where they've got players coming back against the grain when it looks like Trbojevic is going to be sat out the back. So you're going to see a lot of runs where your lead runner is going to go through and they're going to hit him short because they're going to try and catch the Roosters on the outside hip, and that's where they're going to make their meters here.
It's a good point you bring up with Hutchison and Lamb. Lamb has a really good running game. I rate Lamb's running game. He has come on in leaps and bounds this year. He and Flanagan were fighting out for that starting spot alongside Luke Keary 2 years ago when Cronk retired. Obviously, Flanagan got it, and Lamb was forced to take a bit of a backseat, but he's come on in leaps and bounds this year. And really, it's got to a point where he's forced the potential rookie of the year to the bench. That's how good he's been. I don't think their roles will be too different from what it was and has been in the last couple of weeks. If anything, I think that this means that Lamb has more of a running license.
I agree.
I think that's what it's going to be. They'll still share the kicking duties. They'll still share playmaking duties. Hutchison will be a bit more of the controller, but you'll see Lamb go to both sides and almost just give that second option so it's not the obvious block play out the back, Hutchison, Turbo to whichever side it might be. Lamb can kind of feed in when he has to, or it could come across and it could be that outside in play. It could be that double option. So I don't mind that. Here, let me pose this one to you, and then we'll go through our tips and everything. Is it worth switching out Brad Parker for Moses Sully for that particular reason? For the reason of having that inside runner. That Sully is stupid strong and very quick. This isn't a discredit on Brad Parker. Sorry, he's been serviceable. He's been great, but he's not a strong ball runner. He's someone that you want coming onto that short ball close to the line to go through the gap. Sully is someone who you can trust on an inside shoulder, who's just going to barrel straight at your small half. Is that something that you potentially look at, or are even thinking about just to keep the Roosters on their toes on game day?
I'd say if the Seagulls wanted to do anything, they'd switch their 2 and 3 for their 4 and 5 to match up, and you'd put Saab marking up on Tupou to negate the aerial threat that he has, because you saw last week when the Roosters kicked to the corners, Tupou was a problem. He was batting the ball back. That week that Kieran bagged, I think he got a hat trick. All they did was kick to Tupou bat it back, Kieran through. And that's basically, it's a 50-50 roll of dice. Is that you as a winger, you're either going to knock on or you're going to knock it back for somebody, and then it's just whoever reacts fastest. And they'll be working that week in, week out. When you've got Harper and Garrick defending against Tupou and Morris, there's a slight mismatch for me. And one of the key mismatches there is the height and aerial ability of Daniel Tupou coming up against Ruben Garrick. So you switch Saab wings and you negate the aerial threat, but also by putting Parker up against Morris, you're potentially open to a little bit of a peppering down that side defensively. But you don't want to split up your strong partnerships of your edges. Saab and Parker have been doing a quality job together, as of Harper and Garrick. More so attacking than defensively. But that's just where my thoughts line up on that one. And then obviously again you go to the other side, Kieran and Ikevalu against Harper and Garrick. You use Garrick to try and negate Ikevalu, basically. Ikevalu's not a tall winger. He's quite a stocky, robust, low centre of gravity kind of player who's designed to just power him from close range. Garrick could potentially stop him He's not the strongest, isn't Ruben Garrick, but he is a very good attacking player. We've seen that Ikavalu can be a little bit defensively suspect at times. He has a tendency to leave his touchline and come inwards, and that's where Garrick's found his points this season.
All right.
So in terms of using Sully, I don't think Sully's done enough this season to prove that he should be there in a make or break game. And especially when we're talking about the speed of this game as well, Sully's fitness might be brought into question, whereas Parker and Harper have got the game fitness and probably could make the bigger difference.
To be fair, Sully hasn't really had the opportunity.
He's not.
But yeah, all right. I don't mind that. Official tips. Do I think that the Roosters will shut down Tom Trbojevic enough? I'm not looking at the form. I straight up am not looking at the form between these two sides previously. You look at the one game they played together this year, it was without Tom Trbojevic early in the season. Roosters ran roughshod. Don't read into that. I think the Roosters are able to taper the impact of Manly, but I don't think it's going to be enough. So I'm going to go Manly 1-12. The line currently is 10.5. Take that. I take Roosters on a 10.5 start. Manly to win 1-12. So, play that way or play that however, which way you want. Anytime try scorers, I mean, it's not often you're going to get Daniel Tupou at $2.70. So I'm going to, even if he does line up against Jason Saab, I'm eating that up. Tupou is just too big of a threat for me to be at nearly $3. This is on Sportsbet. It's 8:30 on what day is it? Tuesday. Gamble responsibly. You know the drill. Sponsor a Sportsbet if you want. We use you enough. Tupou $2.70. Absolutely. Manly 1-12. Roosters 10.5. I mean, you don't add a heck of a lot of value there if you throw all three of them together. But if you do have a 3+ leg same game multi option, that comes up to $9.25. Probably should pick a anytime try scorer for Manly as well. You know what? Let's go Jason Saab. I just think the two aerial threats, even if they do go up against each other, they don't necessarily negate one another, but I think they both get at least one. So Saab, Tupou, anytime try scorer. Manly 1-12. Roosters on a 10.5 line. Multi that together if you want. That's $14 on a same game multi. If you're singling up, Saab's $1.50, Tupou $2.70. The Manly 1-12, $3.30, and the line is $1.90.
Okay. I'm going to attack this a slightly different way. I'm joining you on the Manly 1-12. I do think that Manly do win this one. I'm going to say the under because I think that both of these teams are going to have their own misfires in attack. I think nerves are going to play an element in this. I think both teams are going to be more focused on defence than attack. They both know that there will be points there or thereabouts, but it's just the defence will be the big key winner here. So I'm going to say that. I'm going to say highest scoring half, second half as well. I think that the first half will be both of these teams keeping each other at arm's length, feeling each other out, whereas the second half, if the first half is as tight as I think it's going to be, the second half will have more points because both teams will be forced to be a little bit more adventurous, promote the ball a little more, and make those attacking decisions and go for those high-risk, high-reward plays that could influence a final result. And just as a bit of an out there call, I'm going to say Schuster anytime. I think that everyone's going to be looking to the edges for the points. Everyone's going to be looking in the obvious places for points. It's just going to take one second rower, one prop forward to put a little bit of footwork on at the line when they think that there's going to be a pass, or someone that just runs a decent enough angle close to the line that puts them through. I can see Schuster being that player. So that's my thinking on that one. I don't think the obvious try scorers are probably going to be there this week because I think that both teams are going to be too aware of the fact that they are there.
All right. Manly went to 12, of course, 330. The under is 46.5. Second half, high scoring half, $1.83. First half is 210. Schuster anytime is, let me find him, 450. If you want to lump them all together, $55.
We bring value.
It's a bit of value for your buck.
It is. Right. If there's nothing more to add, then we get onto the game that you are probably the most cautious and excited about. It is the Panthers versus the Eels. Starting off with the Panthers, the only change that they make is to their number 15, Sorensen in, Leniu out. Then down to the reserves, Leniu is there, Targo, Naden and May. Other than that, the Panthers are unchanged 1 through 17. So it is Edwards, Crichton, Momorovsky, Burton and Toto. Luai and Cleary are the halves, Leota and Fisher-Harris in the props with Coruscant at 9. Then it is Big Billy Kickout in the 11, Kurt Capewell in the 12, and Isaiah Yeo in the 13. Down to the bench, it is Kenny Sorensen, Pangai Jr. and Liam Martin bringing up the final spot. Over to the Eels, and they remain unchanged in their starting lineup 1 through 13, which means that once again, Ray Stone is in the 9. So going through the Eels, it is Gutherson, Dunster, Penasini, Blake and Ferguson. Brown and Moses making up the 6 and 7 with Regan Campbell-Gillard and Junior Paulo in the props respectively. Lane and Niokore make up the second row with Brown in the 13. Then down to the bench it is Smith, Papali'i, Cartwright and Matteson. Down to the reserves it's Makatoa, Kafusi, Opacek and Arthur. I mean, the first big headline out of that Eels side is the return of Matteson in the 17. Lord only knows why he's not starting, or you can think that he's maybe lacking some match fitness. Don't know.
That was the reason that Brad Arthur decided not to play him last week. I would still take him over Sean Lane with how Lane's form has been over the second half of the year. Again, still not sold on Papali'i off the bench, but he did play quite well. Look, I kind of want to rub it into you just a little bit, and you know exactly why.
Right, well, that'll do us here, folks. Thanks for joining us.
Will Penasini made Bradman Best look like a child. Tell me I'm wrong. I dare you to tell me that I am wrong. Penasini, Parramatta needed time down on a $10 million contract over 10 years. Like, so good. That's all I'm going to say about that. I've already rubbed it into you enough over the weekend. I would like to see
what we get up to on a weekend.
PG-13, Matthew. I'd like to see Makatoa come in for Cartwright. Cardi, every time Cartwright gets the ball, I question my sanity. I question if I'm going to go mad. And my heart rate goes to about 150. You don't know if it's the Cardi party from the start of the year. You don't know if it's the Cardi party that crashes your mother's wedding. You really just don't know. And in the final season against arguably the informed side of the competition, you realistically want your best 17. And out of those who are named in the reserves, I'd have Makatoa in there over Cartwright. But we'll see. We'll see. Dylan Edwards back. Big inclusion. Stephen Crichton goes back to the wing, which I think is a bit of an issue if he lines up against Hayes Dunster. Dunster's fine in the air, but Crichton is a tall bloke, can take him well over his head. We'll see how we go. Very worried about how the Panthers are going to try and exploit the jamming of Parramatta's edges. You saw last week all 3 tries for the Knights came through their wingers. Because of the jam, you've got 2 very clinical finishers in Crichton and To'o. It just worries me a lot. Good to see Moses running again, though. Mitch Moses probably had his best game in a very long time. One or two mistakes, but looked like the Moses of old. Brown finally starting to do something in the 6. Kind of curious to see whether he might have got a tap on the shoulder and said, if you don't get rolling, you might be looking at playing reserve grade next year. It's Penrith. And they're going to be pissed, man. They look like crap for a lot of last week. Probably still should have won and didn't. And you know that this side that has Origin potential Crichton, Origin rep Burton, Origin rep To'o, Luai, Cleary, Coruscant, Fisher Harris, the list goes on, Capewell, Yo, Sorensen, I think, has played, Martin, Pangai Jr. I'm worried, man. As a Parramatta fan, I'm worried. I am going heart over head. I am saying Parramatta officially. It should not come as a shock. But like the head is screaming Penrith, who are currently the 122 favourite. If, and oh my God, it's a big if Parramatta are to win, they have to use Will Penasini as a barreling, barging, hustling, bustling short ball runner close to the line. If he lines up against Burton is a great defender, has slotted in immaculately at centre this year. But Penasini is a big boy. His flick to Ferguson for Fergo's second was mwah! It was masterful. It was fantastic. He's our strike weapon in terms of short ball running. Niukore will have a strong first 25 minutes, and then I'd probably say he will come off for Matheson instead of Sean Lane. Alternatively, if Lane comes off, Matto will go to 11, and we'd likely see Niukore maybe go to lock. I don't really know how that's going to work out. I thought Smith played well. That Smith and Stone combination went pretty much as we predicted. I'm not really saying this with a lot of conviction, am I? I'm not convincing anyone. Look, officially I'm tipping Parramatta because I am going heart over head. We didn't choke last week, which thank the freaking Lord. But it's Penrith.
Yeah. So the problem that you face here
Which ones? 17 of them.
The problem that you face here has nothing to do with this week's game and everything to do with last week's game. The media around the game last week was notified the Australian military because one of these Cleary bombs is going to show up as an unidentified flying object. He's going to tower bombs on Blake Taff, and he's not going to be able to hold up. And the Panthers bought that too. The Panthers bought into the media, they bought into the headlines, and they got complacent. Their attack was off. Things didn't click the way that they were supposed to. Luai and Cleary weren't understanding each other. You saw them setting up on different sides of the field, where usually you're seeing Luai and Cleary setting up as first and second receiver to either hit an inside ball or set up a shift play. Last week, you didn't see that. Not even just because of how well South played, and let's give South credit. They played really well. They shut down the Panthers. But the problem is the Panthers bought their own hype. And my Lord, Ivan Cleary will have stripped the paintwork in those locker rooms with his players, because he will not have seen his team have a bad week. He will see a poor attitude out of a superstar team that bought their own narrative that was spun by the media. And there will be none of that this week. And that's why I'm going Panthers 13 plus. The Panthers are going to go out and absolutely put the Eels to the sword and silence anyone that says that they are about to fall off and choke before the finals. So let's not forget the Panthers went close last year, grand finalists. This year, they are atoning for the errors of last year. This week, they are atoning for the errors of last week. And the Eels are in a hot pot right now. You do not want to be the team that comes up against either the Storm or the Panthers off the back of a loss, because every time we see a form team or just a top 3-4 team lose a game, they come out and they go hell for leather for the full 80 minutes, and there will be some sore bodies the day afterwards. And for the Eels, it's going to be no different.
There is one thing that fills me with a little bit of confidence. Oh, it's probably false hope more realistically, but a little bit of confidence. And it's a bit weird saying it, but the one thing that fills me with a little bit of confidence is the first 40 minutes of a reserve grade Parramatta side playing up against a full strength Penrith side 2 weeks ago. It was 12-6 at halftime. In favour of Penrith, yes, it was. But a reserve grade Parramatta Eels with half the squad playing their first or second NRL game for the year with, 4 or 5 debutants. Majority of those have not played a competitive match of NRL in 2.5 months. Held them to 12 points in the first half. And it was a Panthers side that was looking real bloody dominant in that first half. Yes, Parramatta did end up losing 40-6. Match fitness took a toll. Yeah, again, it was a reserve grade side, reserve grade English. Mm-hmm. A reserve grade side and attack. But this is not the same side. I think there are 5 or 6 in this side that played that week. If Parramatta can defend like they did in that first 40 minutes against Penrith this week and attack like how they did last week against Newcastle, I think they have a bloody good shot. I also would like to raise up the fact that we did beat Melbourne twice this year. If we play like how we have against Melbourne, I don't see a reason as to why we can't, at the very least, make it close. If not, spring an upset.
The little consolation that you take from last week from the Panthers is that they are human and they have an off week. They are susceptible to errors. They are susceptible to off weeks. That there will probably be the narrative. Like, look, these guys lose games like we do, but they also win games like we do. So the Eels need to they need to make sure that they are very prepared coming into this game. They need to make sure that they are making those key plays. It's going to be those 1%ers, those little bits of extra effort that are going to win and lose this game. Whether that's someone coming up and making a big play, or whether that's someone coming in and making a big tackle, or forcing an error in a key part of the game. But it just needs to be something which turns the tide of this game. Because if the Panthers start to get on top and their confidence starts to come back, because they will have had their confidence rot last week, there's no doubt about that at all. But if that starts to come back and it starts to shine through, the Eels are in for a very long game. And yep, they completely correct. The Eels did the double over Melbourne. They ended their streak, the most formed team in the competition, arguably the great, well, even going to the stats, the best team in NRL history, based on points differential and all these factors. But this is a one and done game. This is somebody switches off and doesn't cover their man. Somebody doesn't follow their player coming across the line, then you concede a try, and tries are hard to come by in these big games. So it's going to take those extra bits of effort, those 1% plays, those little bits of making sure that everybody is doing their job the best of their ability. And even more so, I just don't think that the Eels have got that over the Panthers right now.
The last thing I'll bring up before we go into tips, and I'll let you go first because I know you'll go on the Panthers way. The media narrative, two very dangerous words in the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The media narrative is that Penrith can already look to next week. They can already look to a preliminary final. 98% of pundits are writing Parramatta off. And if you look back to the 40-6, yeah, by all means. If you look back to Parramatta's final record since 2009, probably. But I think this is make or break. You still have guys in this side playing for their contract. You still have that Parramatta's premiership window is not getting any bigger. Realistically, this is it. If Para don't make a go of it this week, if they don't win this week, I'm not going to see premiership until I'm 40. I'm 24. I'm not going to see it for another 16 years, at least, with how this organisation seems to go. You see how long this is? Why do you think I'm wearing the cap this week? I will shave my head if Parramatta win this week. Like, I'll happily put that one on the line, partially because it needs to go anyways, but also, like, I'll just do it. I would love to see Parramatta get up just to shut the media up. The narrative is Penrith can look to next week. Para have the chip on their shoulder. They have to come out and prove they're not a one and done. If they can do that, they've got to go through Melbourne the week after to get to a grand final. That's a different story. Melbourne in finals v Melbourne in regular season is a completely different story.
Correct.
But if Para beat Penrith, they can walk into next week knowing they've run over the Storm twice this year. No other team in a very long time has been able to say that. But they've got to get through this week first. Your tips.
Okay, so as previously mentioned, I am going to go with the Panthers 13 plus for the reasons that I went with there. And I am going to go Burton anytime. I just think that the opportunity there for Burton to check in off that left foot, he's got a bit of gas to him as well. I think that he probably goes over, probably a bit of a line shift move that sees him go through. Everyone's going to be watching Toto. Burton's just going to slip through a gap. In terms of anything else, no, I'm just going to go Panthers 13 plus and Burton anytime. There's nothing else that I realistically fancy about this game.
Bit surprising for someone who was so very 13 plus. Burton $2.10. Panthers 13 plus is $1.91. The line is 12.5 as well. Two legs together, 330. The over under is 43.5. If I can tickle your fancy on one of those.
This is the thing I worry about the over under because I don't want to go under because I'm tipping Panthers 13 plus. All it's going to take there is what? Panthers 24-10. That's a reasonable scoreline for that kind of game. And that knocks you over under. 34. I'm terrible at maths, in case it's a big takeaway from this. But still, I don't trust the over under for this one because as certain as I am, I was very certain that the Storm were going to do Parramatta 13 plus before. So I'm taking this one with a little bit of caution, especially with the added knowledge that this is finals football and finals brings out the best of people. Always does.
All the worst, depending on how you look at it. Mate, come on, 2 years ago, we went from a 58-0 win to getting kept to 0 by Melbourne. It's tough being a Parramatta fan in any situation, never mind finals football. Like I said, I'm going heart over head. Parramatta 1-12 pays $5. Realistically, if you think Parramatta keeps it close, the line is 12.5. If you think Penrith wins, but Parra keeps it close, Penrith 1-12 is $3.30. I'm just putting that out there for someone if they think Parra will keep it close but not win. If Parra wins, it's going to be Penasini scoring, who currently pays $4.33. With how he finished last week, it'd be hard not to say Fergo at $2.25. If you want, again, it's a big if you think he can step up in a big-time situation when he needs to prove a point, because he hasn't this year, Dylan Brown is paying $6. It may not be his conventional show and go. It may be a little bit of a fluky grubber kick behind, bit of a rebound. Maybe there's a set play this week. Dylan Brown at $6, you're not going to get that too many weeks. You go over to the Panthers. Mind you, these are not official. Officially, I'm saying Penasini and Fergo. Outside of that, it's unofficial. Crichton at $1.72. Going over the top of Hayes Dunster. It's not value, but hard to deny it. Alternatively, Pangai Jr. at $4. The form he's had, he always terrorizes Parramatta anytime that he plays them. That's not a bad shout. Luai's got to make up for last week. Luai at $5 is a shout. If you think that he wants a little bit of revenge on his old club, Campbell Gillard for Parramatta paying $13 for an anytime try scorer. Does it get up? No, probably not. But if he's going to fire up. But officially, I'm saying Parramatta 1-12, Penasini at $4.33, Fergo at $2.25, and I'll throw Crichton in there as well at $1.72. That pays $64 on the multi. Probably wouldn't throw more than $5 on that, to be completely frank with you. But if you win and decide to give us a cut, we're not going to say no.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably going to do us there then. I think we've given as much as we can do for these two games. We've kept you going for about 40 odd minutes. I think that's probably more than enough of us. All that's left to do is thank you once more for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed. If you have, let us know. If you've missed any of the individual previews and you'd like to go back and watch them, you can do on our recast channel, just down there in that link. Also in our page description, if you don't fancy typing it out. Join us next week as we will be going through all of the upcoming games. Let us know whether you're jumping on any of our tips, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you then.